You're listening to LeaderCast, episode 95. Welcome to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Bias and Sarah Thomas, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers. It's Thanksgiving week when this episode goes live, so it only seems fitting that we have a conversation about gratitude. Now, you may say you want to be grateful, but here's the question. Are you? You've likely heard some offer this unhelpful maxim at some point. Have an attitude of gratitude.
Sarah, let's wait a minute. I've preached sermons titled Attitude of Gratitude.
Ruh-roh, I'm already meddling.
So why would you say it's unhelpful?
Well, I say that because there's a big difference between an attitude of gratitude and the actual practice of gratitude. I would say one is a saying, maybe even a pithy saying, and the other is transformational. More on that after a couple of reminders about this episode.
This episode of LeaderCast is brought to you by It Takes Courage, a 4-week study of Scripture and courage starting on January 21st, 2020. It's one way Transforming Mission helps Jesus followers become courageous leaders. You can find resources for this episode, including a transformation guide at transformingmission.org/095. Now, did you know when you become a LeaderCast Insider, you will be the first to know when a new episode is available and that you automatically receive the transformation guide? So we encourage you to become a LeaderCast Insider today at transformingmission.org/095. And then every Tuesday morning, you'll receive an email with a link to the new episode, the Transformation Guide. As you seek to follow Jesus every day, Transforming Mission is here to help. Join us in January for It Takes Courage. Okay, Sarah. You said an attitude of gratitude was a pithy saying, and the practice of gratitude is transformational. So tell us why you said that.
To pick a fight? I'm just kidding. The practice of gratitude is a skill of daring, courageous leaders. An attitude of gratitude is simply a saying. What does an attitude of gratitude even mean? What are the behaviors that go along with that? So I would say it's a catchy phrase at best, and at worst, it doesn't lead people anywhere. So let me offer this quote to you that I read a few weeks ago that I think summarizes the difference. Feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. That was from William Arthur Ward.
So let me state the obvious. You're saying that there is a behavior associated with practicing gratitude.
Yes, more on that in just a minute. I also want to bring up dress rehearsing tragedy in moments of deep joy as a thief of gratitude.
Okay, what are you saying? What do you mean?
Oh, what I'm saying is we do it all the time. So think about a time that you just got a promotion and now in your mind, all of a sudden you're concocting stories of all the ways you're going to screw it up, get fired, and be living on the streets. Or now it may not move that quickly, but for some people it does. Or maybe this wouldn't work for you, but it would work for a woman. You find out that you're pregnant and you're excited for exactly 3 seconds and start thinking about all of the horrible things that could happen during that pregnancy.
All right, as I'm listening, maybe a better question is, why would we do that?
Well, why we do that is because joy is the most vulnerable emotion that we can feel. It unites feelings of deep gratitude right alongside insecurity, beauty, and our human fragility, and wraps it all up in one experience. Sometimes we can't tolerate vulnerability at that level. So this is really about self-protecting. We put on our armor or our masks, however you choose to think about it, and we start making plans to get hurt. And if you're wondering, no, there's nothing about this that's helpful. And that's why I said it's a thief of joy. The joy that we need to make our way through those really tough times. It makes sense when you stop and think about it, though. But that's the challenge. Many people don't think about it. So here's something I've learned. People who name 3 things that they're grateful for each day, just for 1 week, 7 days, end up being happier for an entire month. Now, this study was extended out 6 months, and they couldn't find an end to the happiness. You know what the difference was? It was the practice of gratitude.
So here we are again, just going to ask one more time. Are you actually saying that gratitude is transformational?
I am. If we're willing to step into that place of vulnerability and experience the emotions that come along with it and recognize that sometimes we go down some paths that we don't like, but our brain is really creative and we do it anyway. And we get to the root of truly practicing gratitude. Yes, it's absolutely transformational. So, Tim, let me ask you a question. How do you practice gratitude?
Well, Sarah, this may sound strange, but I think gratitude's part of who I am.
I would say that so. That's why I'm asking the question.
So to think about different practices, there are some times during the day where I stop to give thanks or to go back over the day. I think we've talked on the podcast before that in the evening I'm doing kind of a rundown on the day, and there are things for which I'm grateful. And I've tried to become more and more grateful for little things. So they're not just the big general things anymore. I mean, I think it's always easy for me to be able to say, well, I'm grateful for family. I'm grateful for friends. I'm grateful for work. And I am. But sometimes I'm just grateful for the person. What I've learned is I really like smiles. And there are sometimes, I mean, and it may be because I'm not a big smiler, I don't know, but there are some times that people smile and it's kind of like my whole day changes. And if I remember that, and especially in the evening when I'm kind of going over things, I just give God thanks for the person who smiled, or how that made me, how it helped change my life. And as I'm hearing you say, I might even start giving God thanks for how it transforms my life. So that's one way of doing it. I've got a prayer I pray every day, and in that prayer is also part of gratitude and thanksgiving. And I'll stop in the middle of that, and there are places where I can give God thanks. So that's part of the way it is. Usually happens at night when I'm going to bed. Sometimes if I'm having trouble, I try to think of at least 3 things. But, most of the time it's very easy to come up with more than I need to, and I can go to sleep grateful.
Part of what I love about what you're pointing out, Tim, is the specificity of what you are grateful for. That for most of us, I think it's easy, and sometimes I think a cop-out to say, I'm grateful for family, I'm grateful for work, I'm grateful for a roof over my head, for the food on the table. And we are. Those are big general things that we can be grateful for, but the specificity of one person's smile, to stop and notice that, and then to name that in a practice of gratitude, that's really cool.
And I've also been known at times that if I know the person who's smiling, I may even give them a phone call or send them a text the next day and just thank them for being who they are, because it helps me be who I'm supposed to be. So you put me on the spot, Sarah. How about you? How do you practice gratitude?
So maybe the real reason that I wanted to talk about this is that, if I'm honest, gratitude is something that I've not always been great at. But a couple of years ago, when I read the book, The Gifts of Imperfection, I recognized the importance of it. And there was something about reading that book, and I'm not even remembering specifically what it was, that gave me a reason to pause and to start thinking about the actual practice of gratitude. I didn't have the information that I shared with you at the top of this episode about, the actual practice of gratitude increase people's happiness. So most days now, when I'm laying down to sleep, I name 3 things I'm grateful for. There are seasons that I'll actually write those down. I don't always do that. Sometimes I'll put things in my planner. I kind of have ADD when it comes to things like that. Don't ask me to do the same thing in the same way for too long. I will do it, but I'm not going to do it in exactly the same way. The other thing that I've been doing recently is praying the scriptures that relate to gratitude. And actually, I've been drawing them. You've all have heard me talk about this crazy idea that I had to learn how to do watercolors, and I'm no better now than I was then at that. But part of that is also learning how to draw things and write things. And so what might the scriptures look like if they're written in a different way and expressed in a different way? And maybe if you're a LeaderCast insider, you'll see one of them this week. Just maybe. Or maybe not. We'll see.
So we've just shared how we practice gratitude, and here are a few other ways that you might practice gratitude.
So maybe as you sit down to share dinner with your family or over lunch with colleagues, you just invite people to name one specific thing that you're grateful for that day.
Or you might challenge your children to list as many people and things they're grateful for every night as they go to bed, so that they actually go to bed thinking grateful thoughts.
Or you might share with your spouse one thing that you're grateful for each morning as you're getting ready.
Or you may share with your spouse one reason you're grateful for him or her. Maybe you can keep a gratitude journal. Sarah, I think you and I both know someone who writes down things for which she's grateful, and then when she experiences them again, she kind of checks them off, because it's just a way to become a habit of being grateful.
Yep. Or you might ask your small group one thing that they're grateful for each time you get together, and give God thanks for the joy, the pleasure of accomplishment, and the love that you experience when you're together.
Let me just add another one, and that is become aware of the people around you, so even a smile might be transformational.
Exactly. So if you want to be courageous, we're inviting you to practice gratitude. It's the antidote to that foreboding joy that I was talking about. And I'm going to challenge you not to put off practicing gratitude, not denying it, but experiencing it.
So let's stop here just a minute. To being courageous and the practice of gratitude. Let's just talk about that for a moment.
Sure. One of the daring leadership behaviors is practicing gratitude and celebrating milestones and victories. Contrast that idea with the armored leadership behavior that is working from scarcity or squandering opportunities for joy and recognition. In each one of those behaviors, we have a choice to make. Will you feel all the feelings that come with gratitude, including the feeling of being vulnerable? If so, you're also practicing courage. If not, I'd encourage you, see what I did there? To ask yourself, okay, bad joke, sorry. To ask yourself what you need to put down the armor of scarcity and squandering joy. Does that make sense?
It does to me. but I'm easily pleased, Sarah. So I did get it. I understand.
As we've walked through and talked about being a courageous leader and the practice of rumbling with vulnerability, one of the things that we need to look at in that are our behaviors, our leadership behaviors. And there's two ways to contrast that. One is armored leadership and one is daring leadership. And gratitude falls under that daring, courageous leadership action. And it doesn't even have to be leadership. It can simply just be being daring and courageous. And so when you contrast that with working from scarcity or squandering opportunities for joy, it's really hard to be grateful if you're living from a place of scarcity. You're grateful for what you don't have? No. You refuse to find joy in the midst of what you're experiencing. You're not going to recognize the people around you for the work that they do because, well, the job's not finished, so I can't be thankful yet. No, none of those things are helpful towards leading us to gratitude.
So this week, I'm just thinking of this for a moment. This week, it's a convenient time to begin the practice of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude won't cut it. So how will you, just in my thinking for a moment, how will you practice gratitude this week?
Are you asking me or are you asking our listeners?
I'm asking anyone who would dare to answer. Well, Sarah, let me do it this way. Even though I say, it's pretty general to do things with family, but I think I've mentioned on the podcast before how people transform my life, and that I feel like I've become more who I'm supposed to be as I include more and more people. Now, when I say that, then I'm going to jump off on my granddaughters. I've got a granddaughter who just continues to amaze me. And I'm saying this with total humor, with no humility, but total humor. It's because she's more like me than all the others. That's not true. She's 9 years old and she's doing 9th grade algebra. Now I can be proud of her. But one of the things I stop and think about is how grateful I am that I have a person like her in my life so I can experience life in a way that I couldn't get 9th grade algebra when I was in the 9th grade. But she sees the world differently, and she thinks differently. And so, yes, that's my granddaughter. But when I began to look at the world in a bigger way, there are people like that all around me. It's not about algebra, and it's not about how they think, but it's because they see the world differently. And when I allow myself to be related to them, I can be so grateful for being able to see the world differently. So when I think about it doesn't have to happen at Thanksgiving time. It's every day. There's someone somehow. Now, there are times that, I'm going straight down the tubes because I don't have a good attitude of anything. But just being able to experience God in and through the people around me is enough to have me live differently in relationship to people. So I think that's part of what you're talking about and what we're asking the people listening to us to consider.
So thank you for sharing that, Tim. You gave me some time to think about, okay, how during the week of Thanksgiving will I practice gratitude? And I try to take the better part of that week to be with family, just as you were naming. And part of the ritual and routine when I'm with my family, specifically with my parents, is to be with my dad and help him with his model trains and whatever little wire needs to be connected, or whatever building needs to be moved, or whatever car needs to be put on the track, or if he needs me to run the what's that thing called? The power thing. Yeah. Transformer. Yes. Thank you. Whatever it is. And there have been moments that I'm like, Dad, you don't need me to do this. But what I've come to recognize is that how much it means to him simply to be there with him doing that. A lot of it, no, he really doesn't need me to do it. Yes, I'm an extra set of eyes, a little bit younger, but I now have middle-aged eyes. And yeah, I'm another set of hands, but really it's just about that time together. And my mom and I we don't do the Black Friday shopping, but we usually, run out somewhere, and just spend a little bit of time together, and spending time with my nieces and my nephews and my niece's kids. And when you were talking about your granddaughter, what jumped into my mind is watching my great nieces and nephews, and most of them are under the age of 3. And so they're still at that point where they're curious about everything. And that curiosity that bubbles up in them, it's something that I think, we're just not that curious. Kids that age are just curious, and they're into everything. And I mean that in the best possible way, but they're curious about everything and how it works and what's happening. And they're amazed by the smallest things. And so it may sound cliche, but seeing the world through the eyes of a child, that's how I'm going to practice gratitude. And I mean that in multiple ways, both as a child of my parents and through the little ones that are around me.
So, Sarah, one of the things that I've done over the years is that there are people for whom I'm especially grateful because my life changes every time that. Well, again, it's just people. But there's a scripture that that even at Thanksgiving time, I'll just text it to folks and say, I give God thanks for every time you come to mind, and for all that you've done to help make me who I am. I just think there's just a moment of just offering gratitude to people for who they are is special for me. And since it's all about me, we'll just do that. But it's special for me because I just want people to know how grateful I am that I can be who I am because they've helped me get that way. And I am grateful. If we don't end soon, I'll just keep going down that path.
Well, as you gather around the table with family and friends this week, as you travel from your home to visit with the people that you love, let us challenge you to be thankful for the time together, even the temper tantrums, the meltdowns, the family arguments, and especially the games, the laughter, the good food, and the conversation, and most of all, simply being together.
And maybe if you're listening to this podcast as you travel, when we finish here, you'll stop and at least name 3 things for which you're grateful. Maybe you will bring to mind just one person or 2 persons that have enriched your life. And over the next few days, you'll text or email and just say, I give God thanks for you.
Any final thoughts to wrap up this episode, Tim?
I think I just gave my final thought.
All right. So as you're listening to this episode, we know you're celebrating Thanksgiving with family, and truly Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, so I'm not trying to rush the season. But guess what? Advent starts on Sunday. So to help you journey through the season, on the show notes page, you can download an Advent daily Bible reading plan that will take you from the first Sunday of Advent through Christmas Day. And that is on the show notes page. So as a reminder, again, you can find the show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/095. Now go lead a movement of Jesus followers. And happy Thanksgiving. Bye for now.